They said I never complained, that I was the rock. What they didn't see was the silence in the bathroom, the shaking hands, and the one sentence I whispered that changed everything. I was 6 years old the first time I was told not to cry. It was at my grandfather's funeral. I remember the itchy collar of my shirt, the way my shoes pinched my toes, and my mom kneeling beside me with her hand gripping my shoulder. "Be strong," she whispered. "You're a big boy now." That was the moment it began. Back then, I did not know what strength meant, but I understood what she wanted: silence. No tears, no wobbling lip, just a calm face and dry eyes. So I buried it, swallowed every lump in my throat, and stood there like a statue, even though all I wanted was to climb into her lap and cry until the ache in my chest went away. From that day forward, it became a pattern. Fall off my bike? Get back up, no tears. Scraped knees were nothing. Bruised ribs from my cousin's games? Suck it up. By the time I hit 12, I had learned the rules. Men do not whine. Men do not show fear. And if you feel like breaking down, you go find a quiet place where no one can see. At school, I watched other boys explode when they were angry, cry when they lost, stomp off when things got hard. But I stayed cool. Teachers praised me for being composed. Adults smiled and said I was mature for my age. What they really meant was, I made their lives easier. Then came high school, and the stakes changed. My dad started using phrases like "man up" and "toughen your skin." If I ever looked tired or overwhelmed, he would squint at me like I was failing some unspoken test. "You're not made of glass," he would say. "No one's going to hold your hand out there." So I built walls. At home, I played the dependable son. At school, I kept my head down and my grades up. I never asked for help. Never let anyone see me crack. By the time I turned 18, I had trained myself so well I could sit in a room full of chaos and keep a straight face. But deep down, I was already carrying weight I had no idea how to set down. And it only got heavier from there. When my uncle died that winter and my mom spiraled into grief, I was the one who made the funeral arrangements. When my little sister had her first breakup, it was me she came to, not our parents. When the pipes burst in our basement and my dad yelled for someone to fix it, guess who grabbed the wrench? Every burden, every mess, every meltdown, I was the one who stepped in. No one ever asked how I was doing. Not once. And I never offered it. Because being strong? That was my role. That was what I had been taught. But strength, real strength, has a limit. And I was starting to feel mine crack. I graduated college without fanfare. No party, no celebration. Just a handshake from my advisor and a nod from my father. "Good job," he said, like I had just mowed the lawn. I moved straight into the workforce. No gap year, no backpacking trip, no time to breathe. My degree was in finance, so naturally, I landed in a cubicle with fluorescent lights and 80-hour weeks. By 24, I was the one people leaned on in the office. If something went wrong, I fixed it. If someone quit, I took on their workload. They called me reliable. What they meant was, I never said no. I was the guy who covered shifts, stayed late, trained new hires. My boss once told me I was the glue of the team. It sounded like a compliment. But glue cracks, too, when it gets dry enough, brittle enough. At home, things were not much better. I lived with my girlfriend at the time, Emily. She was sharp, ambitious, beautiful. But even with her, I played the same role. When her mom got sick, I was the one driving her to and from the hospital. When she lost her job, I worked overtime to cover our bills. I never complained. Never asked for anything in return. Just kept the ship afloat, even when I was sinking inside. Emily once told a friend I was unshakable. She said it with pride. I smiled when I overheard it, but inside, it twisted something in me. Because I was shaking all the time. Just not on the outside. I cannot count how many nights I laid awake staring at the ceiling, my chest tight, my mind racing. Not with fear, no. I had buried that too deep to feel it clearly, but with this low, grinding pressure I could never name. There were days when my hands trembled as I poured coffee. Mornings when the thought of getting out of bed felt like dragging a stone uphill. But I always got up. Always. Because strong men do not call in sick. They do not break down. They do not get to fall apart. And still, the weight grew. My father retired that year and started calling me for help fixing things around the house. I went, every time. My younger brother, Jason, went through a rough patch, lost his job, moved back in with my parents. I sent money. No one asked if I could afford it. They just assumed I could. Because I always did. Because I never said no. But I was starting to feel something strange in those quiet moments, like a glass slowly filling, and the surface tension was rising. All it would take was one drop. One. And I had no idea when it would come. But it was coming. That, I was sure of. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. No car crash. No screaming match. No massive betrayal. I was sitting in my car, parked outside the office, watching people file in with their coffee cups and badge lanyards. The sun was low, traffic humming in the distance. I had my hands on the steering wheel, but I could not move. Could not turn the key. Could not open the door. My chest felt tight. Not like a punch, more like a slow, invisible hand pressing down on me. My breathing got shallow. My fingers went numb. I stared at the building like it was something impossible, like walking through those doors meant stepping into a furnace I could not survive. My mind was screaming, but my body was still. That was the moment. Not a breakdown with tears and yelling. Just silence. And then, quietly, I said it. I can't do this anymore. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I had stolen them from someone else's script, but I meant every syllable. I sat there for almost an hour. My phone buzzed, emails, missed calls, probably my boss wondering where I was. I did not answer. For once, I let the messages pile up. I let the world wait. By noon, I drove back home. Emily was working remotely that day. When I walked in, she looked up, surprised. "Are you sick?" she asked. I shook my head. "Did you get fired?" Another no. She tilted her head. "Then what?" I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at my hands. They looked unfamiliar, like they belonged to a stranger who used to carry everyone else's mess. "I think I'm burned out," I said, finally. She blinked. "You? Burnt out?" I nodded slowly. "I think I've been holding it together for too long." There was a long pause. Then came her reply, the first cut. "Maybe you're just being dramatic." The next few hours unraveled like a bad dream. I called in to say I needed a break, maybe a leave of absence. My boss sounded shocked, like I had just confessed to robbing a bank. "But you're the steady one," he said. My dad texted, asking if I could come by and help with the gutters that weekend. I told him I needed rest. He replied with 2 words, "You okay?" I said I was not sure. His next message? "Get some air. You'll feel better." Even Emily, she kept checking her phone as I sat there, barely holding it together. At one point she looked at me and said, "I miss the old you. You used to be stronger." That was the drop. The glass broke. Right there. And everything that had been quietly piling up inside me, the weight, the fear, the exhaustion, finally spilled over. And still, not one person asked me what I really needed. Not one. I wish I could say that once I finally spoke up, people rallied around me. That they stepped in, offered help, told me it was okay to fall apart. But that is not what happened. What I got instead were questions that felt more like accusations. "You're just tired, right? Everyone's tired. You've always handled more than this. You're probably just overwhelmed. Take a nap." Even my mother called, her voice chipper and tight like she was trying to convince herself more than me. "You've always been our rock," she said. "You don't get the luxury of cracking." She meant it as a compliment. I heard it as a sentence. The next day, Emily sat me down. She had been quiet since I came home early from work. I could tell something was building. She did not ease into it. "I don't know how to help you when you act like this," she said. "You're not yourself lately." I told her this was me. The real me. The one who has been barely holding on for years. She shook her head, her expression more puzzled than concerned. "You used to be so composed. So focused." I wanted to scream. Of course I was composed. Of course I was focused. Because I buried everything else. That was the version of me people liked, the one who never needed anything. The one who carried everyone's load but never handed his over. And now that I needed space, now that I needed to fall apart, they acted like I'd failed them. At work, my manager asked me to reconsider the leave. Said it might affect my reputation. That people might see me differently. My brother called me and joked, "Midlife crisis already?" He laughed, but I did not. I could feel something inside me unraveling. Not in a way that made me feel dangerous. Just tired. So deeply tired. I started turning off my phone. Ignoring emails. Letting calls go to voicemail. I spent my mornings staring out the window, trying to remember what it felt like to not be needed. What it felt like to exist for myself, not just for the convenience of others. But it always came back, those voices. "You're overreacting. You used to be stronger. Don't be so emotional." And the worst part? Somewhere deep down, I still believed them. Still thought maybe they were right. Until one night, something changed. Something subtle, but undeniable. It started with something stupid. I was in the kitchen, sometime after midnight. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Emily had gone to bed hours ago, probably tired of trying to understand something she could not see. I opened the fridge, looking for orange juice. That was it. Just orange juice. But my hand stopped halfway. I could not explain why. It was like my brain disconnected from my body. 1 second, I was reaching for a bottle. The next, I was standing there with my arm frozen, my breath shallow, my legs shaky. Then I slid down. Just let myself fold onto the cold tile floor, my back against the cabinet, knees drawn up. I did not even think about it. My body just gave out, like someone had hit a switch and all the strength drained out of me. And there it was. The quiet. Not peaceful, not comforting. More like a void. A heavy silence that pressed down on me like I was sinking into the floor. I closed my eyes. Not to sleep. Just to get away from the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. From the tightness in my chest. From the weight that had been stacking up, brick by brick, for years. I had always thought a breaking point would be loud. Explosive. Something people would notice. A car crash of emotion. A scene. But mine was a whisper. A pause. A man in a dimly lit kitchen who could not even finish pouring a glass of juice. No tears. No shouting. Just stillness. And the realization that I had absolutely nothing left. I thought about every time someone called me strong. Every time they said I was the reliable one. The one who never cracked. Never complained. I thought about how no one ever asked what that kind of role costs. People love the strong ones. As long as they stay useful. As long as they never make it uncomfortable. But here I was, a shell of the man everyone leaned on. And no one knew. No one cared to know. That was the part that hurt more than anything. It was not just that I was falling apart. It was that no one noticed. I could have laid there all night, and no one would have checked. Not Emily. Not my family. Not my coworkers. And maybe that is what I needed, to see the truth of it all laid bare like that. Because in that silence, something settled. Not peace, but clarity. This was not working. This life I had built around everyone else's needs, this version of myself that only existed to keep things running smoothly for others, it was killing me. Quietly. Slowly. And it was time I stopped letting it. The next morning, I did not get up right away. I stayed in bed while the sun poured through the blinds and painted lines across the bedroom wall. For once, I let my phone buzz unanswered. Missed calls. Work emails. A calendar reminder blinking at me like it still had power over my day. It didn't. When Emily walked into the room, she paused, surprised to see me still lying there. She stood in the doorway like she was unsure whether to speak or just walk away. "You're not going in?" she asked. I shook my head. She exhaled this long, disappointed sigh. "You really are just giving up, huh?" I sat up. Not angry. Just tired. "No," I said. "I'm finally doing something for myself." That did not go over well. She started pacing, saying things like how I was letting everything fall apart. That she did not sign up for this version of me, the quiet, sluggish one who could barely answer a question without staring off like he was somewhere else. "I miss the man who handled things," she said. "You used to be dependable. You used to be strong." That word again. Strong. Used like a weapon. Like a measuring stick I was suddenly too short to meet. I told her I was still me. That maybe I was just tired of pretending. Of always being okay. But she did not hear that. She just shook her head and said something I will never forget. "You're becoming weak." She said it like it was a diagnosis. Like it explained everything. And for a second, it worked. That old guilt flared up inside me like a bad habit. The urge to apologize. To fix things. To stand up and go right back to carrying the weight. But I didn't. I let her walk away. I sat there and let the moment hang in the air. Not because I was okay with it, but because I finally understood. People only love your strength when it benefits them. The moment it shifts, even slightly, into something messy, something that asks for care instead of providing it, they recoil. I looked around the room, at the life I had helped build. The apartment, the furniture, the framed photo on the nightstand from our 3rd anniversary. And for the first time, it did not feel like home. It felt like a place I had been keeping afloat for someone else. So I made a quiet decision. One that no one saw coming. And it started with a suitcase. I did not slam the door. I did not leave a note. I did not yell or throw things or demand anyone understand. I just packed 2 duffel bags, a backpack, the essentials, and then I walked out. Emily was on a call in the living room, too caught up in whatever she was pretending mattered more than what was unraveling in the next room. I paused at the door for a moment, half expecting her to turn and ask where I was going. But she never did. So I left. I stayed with a buddy from college for a few nights, Trevor. He was the kind of guy who did not need explanations. When he opened the door and saw my bags, all he said was, "You good?" I told him not really. He nodded. "Fridge is stocked. Couch is yours." That was it. The first real kindness I had felt in weeks. Not a performance. Not concern laced with obligation. Just simple, quiet support. For the next 3 days, I did not check my email. I turned off notifications. I ignored every buzz from my phone. And the world kept turning. That was the strangest part. I stopped carrying everything and nothing collapsed. My office sent a few follow-ups. HR wanted to touch base about my leave request. A colleague emailed me some urgent questions. I deleted them all. Even my dad texted again. "Let me know when you're feeling like yourself." Funny how people never notice you're drowning until you stop swimming. And even then, they just want you to get back in the water. Trevor and I sat on his balcony one night, drinking cheap beer and watching the city lights blink like stars that forgot where the sky was. "You ever think about just disappearing?" I asked him. He smirked. "All the time." But then his face got serious. "You did the right thing, man," he said. "Most people break and pretend they didn't. You broke and owned it." That hit different. Because I had spent my whole life avoiding that word, broke. Like it meant failure. But maybe it meant freedom. I was not okay. But I was honest. And for the first time in my life, that felt like a win. I knew I had more to face, more fallout coming. People would not understand. Some would turn their backs. But I also knew this. I was never going back to who I was before. And the next knock on Trevor's door? It was someone I never expected. It was a little after 9 p.m. when the knock came. Trevor was in the shower, and I was halfway through a bowl of cereal, sitting in his kitchen in gym shorts and an old hoodie, trying to remember what it felt like to just exist without expectations. The knock was soft, hesitant. I figured it was one of his neighbors, maybe someone asking about parking or noise. I opened the door, and there she was. Emily. Hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes red like she had not slept in days. She was holding her phone like it was a security blanket. For a second, we both just stood there in silence. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I stepped aside without a word. Let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch like it was foreign territory. Like she was afraid she might break something. "I didn't mean what I said," she started. "About you being weak." I sat across from her, arms crossed, back straight. Not angry, just done. "I think I just got scared," she continued. "You've always been the strong one. Seeing you like that, it threw me." I let the words hang. Because that right there was the point. "I was always like that," I finally said. "You just never looked close enough." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I miss us." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was too late for phrases like that. "Do you miss me?" I asked. "Or the version of me that made everything easier for you?" She hesitated. And that pause? That was my answer. It was not just Emily. Over the next few days, others started reaching out too. My manager emailed again, offering to talk things through. My dad left a voicemail saying he was proud of me for taking space, which felt hollow, considering the silence before. Even my brother, Jason, messaged to say he had been worried, then asked if I could spot him rent this month. It was like the moment I stepped away, people realized their safety net was gone. But none of them asked why I left. None of them really asked how I was doing. They just wanted me to resume my role. Their rock. Their fixer. Their strong one. I looked at Emily, still waiting for something, anything from me. And I realized. I was done filling cups that would never pour anything back. I went back on a Sunday. The sky was gray, the kind of dull overcast that makes everything feel heavier than it already is. Emily had texted earlier that week saying my things were ready. I told her I would be by in the afternoon. She said okay. No emojis. No small talk. When I walked into the apartment, it smelled the same, like citrus cleaner and something faintly floral. But it did not feel the same. My presence no longer belonged there. My keys did not feel right in the door. The place had moved on without me. She had packed almost everything. My clothes, my books, even the little keepsakes I had left on shelves and drawers. It was all lined up in boxes by the door, taped and labeled, like she was handling a business transaction. And in a way, maybe she was, wrapping up the remains of a life we both outgrew. She was sitting on the couch, knees pulled in, hands folded like she was bracing herself. I said hi. She nodded. I started loading up my things without much talk between us. Just the rustling of cardboard and the occasional creak of the floorboards. She watched me, but not in a way that begged for attention. More like someone witnessing a goodbye they already accepted. When I zipped up my last duffel, she finally spoke. Are you really sure this is it? I paused, hand still on the zipper. I am, I said. This version of me, this life, I can't go back to it. She swallowed hard. I didn't want to break you. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the guilt etched into her face. And I knew she meant that. She did not want to hurt me. But she had. Not with malice. With silence. With pressure. With that unspoken rule that I always had to be the one who carried everything. You didn't, I said. I was already breaking. You just didn't see it. She nodded like she had been waiting to hear that. Maybe needed it to understand her part in all of this. I picked up the last bag and headed toward the door. She stood behind me, still holding herself like she was afraid she might fall apart too. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said. I did not turn around. I already did, I replied. And then I stepped out. Not into clarity, not into peace, but into freedom. It has been 4 months since I walked away. I do not live out of a duffel anymore. I found a small apartment a few blocks from a quiet park. Nothing fancy, just enough space to breathe. I got a couch that is not made for guests, a bed that fits only me, and a coffee mug with a crack in the handle that I refuse to throw away. It suits me. I picked up part-time consulting work. Less pressure, more control. Some days I work from my kitchen table. Some days I just walk. I let my phone ring without guilt now. I let messages go unanswered until I have the space to reply, not out of spite, but because I finally believe my time is mine. And for the first time in my life, I do not feel selfish for saying that. People still do not get it. My dad thinks I am going through a phase. My brother keeps joking that I bailed on adulthood. My old coworkers send emails with "miss your hustle" in the subject line, as if I should be flattered. They do not understand that walking away was not quitting. It was surviving. Because when your whole life is built around carrying others, no one ever teaches you how to carry yourself. And the truth is, I did not leave because I stopped being strong. I left because I finally understood what strength really meant. It is not about endurance. It is about honesty. It is about saying, I am not okay, and not apologizing for it. It is about dropping the armor and admitting that being needed is not the same as being loved. Sometimes I still feel guilty. That itch to reach back out, to offer help, to explain myself. But then I remember those nights, when my hands trembled pouring coffee, when I sat on the kitchen floor, trying to remember how to breathe. No one came for me then, so I came for myself. And now? Now I choose who I carry. Now I ask myself, how are you doing? And I answer honestly, I am healing. Not fixed, not perfect, but free. And finally, I am mine.